Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome at this panel about new technologies and innovation. And I hope you'll enjoy this panel. We have a great lineup of panelists, and I hope you'll have a great lunch during this panel if you have lunch and in this time zone. The panel consists of people from different time zones. So some are already almost in their evening, and we are here just at 12 here in Amsterdam. If my panelists can please also put their cameras on so we can see everyone. And so, yeah, great, guys. Thank you. So everyone listening in, you see the names of the people on your screen, and you also see the cameras on the side. And very great you're all here. Yeah, new technologies. There's, of course, a lot going on in the whole marketplace of innovation. And that's what we try to discuss in this coming 60 minutes. My name is Joost Berg, and I'm really in the space of innovation between client and financial service industries and how the financial services can stay relevant today, but also in the future. There's several projects in that. Prior was also managing the Startup Bootcamp Cyber FinTech and Cybersecurity program in Europe, and great to host this panel. Before we go further, I would like to make a little round and give all my panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. And if we have 6 men in the panel, including myself, I would like to give Aditya the floor, fresh from Singapore, and great you're here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I did notice that, by the way, but very happy to be here. So yeah, I'm Aditya Sholapurkar. I currently head strategy and corp dev for a Singapore headquartered but global company called Neum. We are a global fintech platform, and while that can mean many things to many people, the best way to think of us is to understand us as a global system of infrastructure and licenses. So we're licensed across 40-odd countries. We're present in about 180 countries. And we do everything from cross-border payments, issuance, collections, payments, all the unglamorous, super technical institutional fintech stuff that unfortunately fewer people understand, but it is a very interesting space. I've spent a lot of time in investment banking, sales and trading, as well as consumer-facing fintech, and I have to say that this is probably the most technically challenging, but also interesting domain that I've ever had the good fortune to be a part of.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you for your introduction. And then I think we just go clockwise. So Amit, please, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, everyone, and good evening, good afternoon, depending on the time zone, as was mentioned earlier. My name is Amit Kumar. I work for UiPath, and I lead their global financial services vertical, and I'm responsible for their go-to-market, across the globe. Essentially, UiPath is the world's leading hyper-automation platform firm. We are what arguably the fastest enterprise software company out there. But essentially, from financial services perspective, we cater to about 700 banks, capital markets, and financial services firms worldwide, primarily helping them in operational efficiencies using both RPA and AI and machine learning.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so no, thanks for that. I think very important, very often also the use case, right? To move into innovation, adapt new processes, to see how you can automate them. And I think also what Aditya just said, I think infrastructure, comply with the licenses, the license to operate, right? Very important in this whole space. So thanks for that. Joe, I know you just came from another session, so great to have you on this panel as well. So can you quickly introduce yourself? We don't hear you. We're still on mute.
See, I'm not very technical. Yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Joe Bloemendaal. I'm the lead strategist at Mytech. Mytech is a leading provider in identity verification technology, and we have a global presence, but I look after the innovation and strategy of the products on the EU side of the house.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, very important when we move into the virtual world. Also make sure that you have to deal with the right person, right? So very interesting to have you on board. And then we go over the Alps to Milano. Filippo, welcome on board.
Hi, thank you. Welcome to everybody. I'm Filippo Renga. I'm the director of the research on fintech and insurtech here at Politecnico di Milano. That is one of the most important technical universities in Europe and in the world. And we do research. We do research with 30 researchers and on 15 research streams. Yeah. So I think that's all.
Thank you, Filippo. And so you will share later on also some interesting data with us. So we're very happy to have you here. And then David, so we talk about infrastructure, we talk about making things possible. So that's also what you do, right? In Venturi, David.
Yes, that's correct. Good afternoon. My name is David Bushman, and I'm with Venturi. That's a fintech startup. We just passed our second anniversary, so that's great. What we do is we have a platform connecting SME borrowers to financiers. We facilitate asset-based financing. Currently, the asset is an invoice. And we use blockchain and artificial intelligence to automate the process as much as possible.
Yeah, thank you, David. So, and then, Lawrence from ABN AMRO Bank, great to have you on board as well. And we all do this, of course, to make financial services better and in collaboration with, let's say, the incumbent banks with strong balance sheets and risk controls in place. So, Lawrence, can you quickly introduce yourself and what you do within the bank?
Sure, and thank you for the invitation. Very pleased to be among this panel and all the people in here. Nice lineup. I'm Lawrence. I work for ABN AMRO, which is one of the leading Dutch banks. My role is that of innovation partnerships, and that basically means fostering collaboration between the small and the big innovators. Can be either startups, can be more mature fintechs. So looking forward.
Yeah. So Lawrence, you scan the market constantly to see which pieces can you improve through bringing new technology, new parties to do better as an organization as a whole, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the panel. So great to have you all on board. I think we have to start with. I think we thought let's also do some interaction with the audience. So we have a poll. And I think that poll is an interesting one because it's about how to support innovation. The plumbing infrastructure, both technically and legally, are crucial to enable innovation. So that's actually the foundation, the groundwork, what is required to be able to come up with added value services from incumbents, from tech firms, from other parties, and the fundamentals should be right. And actually, to the words everyone in this call, interesting what you think about it, if you agree or if you don't agree. And I think that's then interesting for us to start off actually with that thought. So it's really about the importance of, let's say, the underlying fundamentals. I always want to say to enable new innovation as well, both from the infrastructure, legal framework perspective. I think in the payment industry, we see a lot of that moving. Think about instant payments, now also request to pay. This is infrastructure collaboration with many institutions around that bring this technology in place for then others to build on extra and new innovative services. So I don't know, Anne, if people are clicking on the poll. I don't see that, to be very honest. But probably Filippo, in the meantime, can you enlighten us already a little bit on that topic and also share a little bit with us what you see in all the research you do in your 30 plus different research streams and how that is moving? Filippo.
So yeah, you mean in the last month? In the last month, 6 months, also during the lockdown, digital finance received a huge push during, definitely on both on the demand side and also on the offer supply side. I can tell you, I think it's really interesting, because if you look at the demand side, a lot of people have discovered the new digital services, not only for entertainment, as we know, like Netflix, like Spotify or food delivery, but also for financial needs. And it was really important to push innovation and at all the level of the innovation. And what we have measured during the lockdown, I think it's interesting because look at this data. First of all, we have seen an average increase of 75% in new bank accounts opened completely online. I mean, end to end, from activation to the signature of the contract, with the specific bank reaching an increase of 200%. So a huge, huge push. You know that here in Italy, we faced the COVID as first country in Europe, but also in among the countries in the world. But I would like to highlight also that some banks reached only an increase of 2%, not so huge. And this is, it was a problem, mainly due to poor user experience and people without a digital culture inside the companies. But it's because it's really important to have a proper culture in order to push innovation in a company. Moreover, just few information, we have seen an average increase of 32% of transaction on transaction made using mobile banking apps.
Yeah.
I mean, and moreover, an increase of more of 50% for peer-to-peer payments, and in order to pay also retailers, peer retailers, because we need to receive food, I need to interact financially also with peers, my near retailers. So it was a huge increase.
Okay.
Just
interesting to hear, Filippo. So you really said it is also about the culture, right, of organizations.
Yes, definitely, for sure, for sure. Okay. Otherwise, if you have the best technology, you are not able to use it or exploit it. Obviously, you need technology.
Yeah. So, Lawrence, how do you see that as a big bank in the play of innovation as well?
Yeah, I was just looking at the results, and everybody seems to agree. Quite interesting, but I tend to agree, obviously, that I think many years back, already with the PSD2 movement and the open banking movement, people started. There could become a fundamental shift in how the financial infrastructure globally is going to work in the future. And I think especially when blockchain and the DLT hype followed, and people actually realized, hey, this can actually really change fundamentally. And I think that's what we've seen happening over the past couple of years, not only from the fintech side, but also from the regulatory side, that especially in Europe, people started to realize that fundamental changes to the banking landscape can actually benefit innovation. And at the beginning, there was some resistance to that, but now I think you can see already people really understanding that this is crucial, even for the global economy. That is, I see it as a feeding ground for innovation and new business. So I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah, so and how, Adit, how do you see that from your perspective, right? So I think it's always interesting to look at from different perspectives. As a supplier or as a provider of technology and connecting to different infrastructure. So can you respond to this of the two previous speakers?
So yeah, I mean, I think I'm a very strong advocate of really the extremely understated importance of infrastructure, by the way. And the best way to analyze this is to look at examples that have worked and not worked, right? So if you look at, and I'm not going to name the ones that worked, but I'm pretty sure you'll know. So if you look at, let's say, certain neobanks that were essentially nothing but a layer over traditional banking infrastructure, and very often it was, an incumbent's attempt at being new and digital without really fixing your underlying core, it hasn't really ended well, right? Some of them have been shut down after millions of dollars of investment after 1 year, and customers' funds have had to be returned. And what that typically does is it also creates a very strong level of customer distress, right? That, oh, neobanks don't work. In other parts of the world, when you've seen these being built on, either infrastructure from scratch or fintech infrastructure, or very often, and we're seeing this with one of our clients, a bank building their neobank on top of our infrastructure. When it's done right, it shows very evidently in the end product. And what it does is it opens up the market even more. So, contrary to, let's say, 3, bad raps that, let's say, that would have made the news. One example of, let's say, like a Kakao in Korea really disrupting the sort of stronghold on payments that incumbents had goes a long way to just create trust in the market. And that's why I think, you cannot stress enough on the importance of infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So it's also very much about trust. So, if we look about trust, Joe, as a company in the digital identity, right? You have to deal with this you bring new technology in play, but it is also, of course, should also be embedded in jurisdiction, right? And technology is a combination of both. So, Joe, how do you see that?
Yeah. I agree. I need to use the word trust. I like to use that as well, because that's the fundamental. As we move into this interconnected world, the open banking, open API, ultimately, we have to realize that we're going to become much more dependent on partners. And if the infrastructure doesn't work and there's no trust underlying all of that, it's going to fall apart, obviously. Now, there's 100 directions I could take that comment in. I think really important to understand is that identity verification sits before and at the core of everything after that. So authentication, payment, everything after that depends on that first step, that first onboarding. And to Filippo's point, we power at MyTech, we power 5 banks in Italy. And the leap of innovation that was made, driven, unfortunately, to be honest, by COVID, was impressive. We had a hard time convincing some of the banks in Italy to adopt remote onboarding as an idea. And now, as you mentioned, Filippo, that's most of the banks are looking into that or have implemented it already. A great example is Lawrence company, ABN AMRO, has remote onboarding and has had that for many years already. And I think that's fundamental. And then, Joost, there's all sorts of reasons that it's not working well yet, the infrastructure in my world. We, not like payments a bit ahead of us. We don't have interoperable systems. There is no true digital identity. We have digitized identities. And to be frank about it, we're still relying on paper-based documents for a lot of identity verification in the digital world. So I think absolutely critical that the pipework, the infrastructure, cross-border, cross-verticals is key to driving the innovation.
So what's interesting what you said, Joe. So a lot of still paper-based, and we digitalize it, and then we move further and push it further into the value chain. So Amit, as a company of process automation, suddenly, instead of receiving all these manual documents, we receive a lot of data points, and we want to onboard people quickly. So speed is one, but also to make sure all the data points land correctly in databases, are connected, are cross-checked. So how do you see that when we look at into connection with the poll?
Absolutely, and I think COVID has been, as you rightly said. Satya Nadella talks about the fact that 2 years of transformation happening in 2 months, so to say, as far as the COVID is concerned. I would say we have firmly pivoted away from chasing operational efficiencies to chasing operational agility. And to your point, I think branches were shut the contact centers were operating at 50%, their capacity. So from automation perspective, it made perfect sense for us to equip those contact center agents, virtual channels to operate at the BAU. But there is another angle as well that I think we somehow missed in the subtext while we were talking about the COVID impact on operations, which is that a lot of government programs forced big banks and mid-sized banks to give a lot of loans to commercial, as you know, the entire commercial segment was completely shut and it continues to be shut. How would they give so many loans? And that was one example where I think automation really helped. We believe automation really helped save a lot of jobs, a lot of payrolls, and brings me back to that whole agility and resilience as a success factor as far as operational efficiency is concerned.
Yeah, so without operational agility, as you said, not efficiency, but agility, you could never have so many new loans paid out on a manual basis, because you simply don't have the human capacity to process that.
Yeah, I mean, here in States, they talk about 80 times the annual volume of commercial loans being given in 1 month.
Yeah, I've heard that.
These are extraordinary. These are extraordinary times that we just witnessed.
Oh, that's yeah. I think from processing, definitely it is. Although I'm a little worried what happens in several years' time when companies are not able to repay all these loans. So let's see how that will develop. So David, from your perspective, right? So you build basically a platform for companies that are looking for financing and for financiers to connect. So you built basically your own infrastructure, right? So how do you see that, and how are you dependent on, let's say, existing infrastructure or the plumbing?
Well, of course, the better the infrastructure, the easier it gets. But as you said, we built a platform using blockchain and using artificial intelligence, and we use the data to basically take all the efficiencies out of the process. The more information that is available, the easier it gets to cooperate with the traditional sector. But one of the things that springs to mind is that if you look at the increased activities in the DeFi area, right, the decentralized financing, which was about the total value locked in the smart contracts, the beginning of this year was about 600 million, and it's now around 8 billion. That shows a huge increase, and I think that these activities will also lead to certain changes or reassessments in the regulations as well. So innovation will also drive the infrastructure and the legal surrounding.
Yeah, so you say because new needs are popping up, companies are coming to provide that. We see that's not a real regulatory basis for that, or infrastructural basis for that to support that properly. And that also brings collaboration to, let's say, fix the fundamentals to further grow into servicing and bring in these new propositions to manage it, to fulfill the needs, basically. So very interesting. And we see here there's a lot at play, and it is a huge area actually what we try to discuss. So to channel that a bit, we also have a few quotes, right, which we would like to use going further. So Anne, can you please put on the first quote we have? Yeah, so it's much more about a collaboration, right? So it is about open finance and open banking. And banks are not afraid for fintech, big tech. All players need to collaborate to succeed in their mission. So almost, are we competitors or are we friends? How do we work together at a certain area? We also want to compete together, but also need each other to achieve our reason of existence almost. So Amit, so in that sense, right, you deal with a lot of data, pulling out from different sources, bring it together, act on that. So how do you see that when you reflect to the quote?
No, absolutely. I think data as we know today, in these large banks is kind of siloed. It's kind of it's kind of hidden from its true purpose, which is to draw insights. And I think there is a play not only for specialized firms, specialized data and insights firm, but also for firms like us to be able to, I would say, free up the data from these legacy sources, right? I mean, using combination of RPA or AI or machine learning, and get it out in the hands. And this is very important. I think get it out in the hands of those business, folks who are closest to the domain. So it's almost like a self-service, and I think that's where we believe the next sort of revolution as far as data and insights is going to come. How can we equip those citizen developers, citizen data scientists to sort of free up the data and get the data on their desktops?
Exactly.
And
yeah.
That's our endeavor.
Yeah. That is, I think, it's quite interesting what you said. So what I also heard from people that financial institutions, banks, of course, have set up their database or the mainframes decades ago, right? Exactly. And this infrastructure was not designed with the purpose of current uses of data analytics, right? So a lot of data is not stored the way we would like to see it nowadays. And so we can almost say that they're not designed for that purpose. So a lot of data lakes actually become almost data swamps, right?
Exactly. And I again say the agility part, right? I mean, it worked really well as long as you were using these data warehouses or data lakes for, MIS or internal reporting. But if you want to really do day-to-day analytics to be able to respond to the market conditions, you have to make it very agile and let your citizen data scientists and citizen, visualization experts get the data in their hands itself.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's not only get the data in the hand, but also almost on a real-time basis and visualize it.
Precisely.
So Lawrence, any reaction from your side? And the collaboration impact to make sure you can really utilize and monetize on the data you have.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you know, Joost, this for many open up the bank and create a bank as a platform. I think obviously it is always quite hard for an incumbent to say, hey, we're not good at this, and there's some interesting company out there doing something better than we do. But we've at ABN AMRO we've come to the insight that for innovation and business development, we basically rely on the outside world. There's so much innovation happening out there. So the key is really, how do you organize as an organization to be able to tap into that, to collaborate, to partner up. And I think taking a little bit of a humble approach here, I think we haven't cracked the code yet. I think nobody does. That's why we also, for example, partnered up with Techstars to organize an accelerator and to really bring those two worlds together. And I think that's an example of a partner that really speaks both languages and knows what corporates want and what startups want. And obviously also partnerships in the past. We've learned a lot from Tink. That was at the beginning very interesting, a bit of a defensive move in the PSD2 times. But I think if you're open to collaboration and willing to share some of your assets and be open about what your real intentions are, I think great collaborations can come to life. And I honestly believe that the real competition is not really coming from fintech or from big tech, but from the companies that really figure out how to collaborate with the ecosystem. And those companies are actually our real competitors, because they can innovate together, and I think that's where the speed of innovation really lies.
This has nothing to do actually with technology. It has to do, how do you collaborate as an organization? How do you embrace an innovation culture and capacity? How do you collaborate? How do you open up, basically? So that's really what you said is the golden formula almost. So 1 + 1 is 3, right? And how to figure it out, where to do it.
Yeah, but of course you need the technology, but it starts indeed with that mindset and with that attitude that you need to collaborate.
And that's of course not always easy, because you also have, as a bank, you have an execution engine, right, that has to deliver value today and tomorrow to the existing clients. And you have to develop this much more an innovation engine. And then I think there should be many, many handshakes, right, to make that happen and to make that work.
Yes, definitely. But I say that the tension should be there, right? If there's no real tension between, as usual, you're not innovative enough.
Yeah.
And there also shouldn't be too much tension, because then, you will lose the mothership, and you will lose the colleagues that will in the end make it happen and make it really big and scalable and bring it to all our clients.
Yeah,
so,
and these people will then move to the other side of the equation, set up their own startup to collaborate again with the ones that are willing to collaborate, right?
That also happens, and it's also fine.
So Aditya, David, and Joe, so I think it's interesting to hear your reaction on this as being, let's say, this little party in that whole big value chain that can make a difference in that whole collaboration aspect, and how you have experienced that. So let's first go to Singapore. Aditya, how do you have experienced that as a person, but also as an organization?
I think specifically within, across fintech, but more so in institutional fintech, it's almost impossible to not be friends with banks, right? And I'm asked this question very often, like, are you friends? Are you enemies? What are you? And I'm like, we're peers, right? At times we collaborate, at times we compete, but we're all in it for the same goal. I mean, if you think about it, right, there's very few jurisdictions in the world, for example, where a fintech can directly participate in clearing and settlement. You always do that using the bank. You look at like the best wallets, the best alternative rails. Somewhere they do plug into local clearing and settlement through bank partners, and that's why it's really important to have that sort of relationship. The same way for banks, right? There's so many activities for banks that are very, very core to them, right? And then there's others that they end up losing either too much money or too much time on it. Maybe those aren't so core anymore, right? And what would be so wrong about, let's say, working with a fintech, someone who could do this for you, with you, for your customer, to offer just a better experience at a fraction of the cost, fraction of the time. That's unequivocally been my experience. And fortunately, we see more, incumbents, more banks actually really embracing that opportunity.
Yeah. And I think also for the fintechs, right, as yourself, you need to collaborate, right? Because at the end of the day, a payment has to go to central bank money.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It is a whole chain of activities. Yeah. Okay. And David, how do you see that?
I fully agree that the cooperation is of great importance. And looking at, for example, PSD2, open banking, that can only facilitate further innovation and change the culture. We look for cooperation with banks. We speak to them quite often. We don't see each other really as competitors in that field at all. So there's definitely room for cooperation.
So you also clearly then focus on a different type of client group or need than what you see the normal banks are looking for. So you really fill up a gap in that sense.
Yeah, that's correct. We see that we look at a different market segment. We facilitate loans based upon invoices. Normally they're relatively small invoices. And we want to make the process as simple as possible to keep the administrative cost low. And these type of customers and these types of loans are often also not of interest to the somewhat more larger institutional companies.
So because to use the words of Amit, you use operational agility instead of operational efficiency for that, right?
Yeah.
To also be able to do this for cost efficient way with low value invoices or interesting.
Yeah, but we also believe that using the right technologies will drive the inefficiencies out of the system, and driving inefficiencies out of the system will generate a more fair marketplace, and that of course will happen throughout the chain.
Yeah.
Now at a fintech startup, it's easy to start there, and that's what we focus on. But I'm sure that we will see it across the chain.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks, David, for these words. So Joe, David, of course, they provide the product to, let's say, the corporate, the SME world, really having the financing needs. You provide actually service for onboarding That's of course a different type of collaboration as well. So how have you experienced that so far in the collaboration? It's also a sales process and to convince, let's say, your prospect clients that they need this, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's quite a lot of stories that come to mind. So yeah, we provide our services to large incumbent banks, but also to fintechs, marketplaces, etc. And sometimes it's pretty hard. And sometimes it's difficult, like Lawrence says, for the incumbents to really convince all the stakeholders to adopt technology like this. Specifically, our technology touches on so many facets in a bank. So there'll be the risk and compliance people, fraud, IT, but then the business side of the house as well. Usually the business side loves it. They want to be able to onboard people as quickly as they can, cool new technology, selfies taken, the documents, it's all on the mobile, cool, let's go. But then the risk guy gets worried and compliance isn't convinced this is the right way forward. And then you think of the fintechs or the new banks, some of them we work for as well, they have to use our technology. So you imagine the sales guy sitting in front of them because they don't have branches, they have no network, no alternative to onboard clients through. So there's the, for them it's, well, I'm going to buy it from MyTech or one of our competitors, really. But the collaboration is essential. You can see the maturing of our environment turning basically into a world that is becoming difficult to understand for a lot of our clients, because is MyTech a point solution or are we a complete KYC solution? What else do I need? And that's where I agree with that ultimately clarity in the collaboration is key. And it's not always easy. Big banks, it's not easy for a big bank to turn direction and all of a sudden adopt new technology and start using it. The driver behind it is new even to them as well, not just managing financial risk, but now managing non-financial risk and looking after data, like Amit said, and then personal data as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is of course a means to tap into new wallets, right? Or tap into new client segments which are unknown to you before. Yeah, and I think also what Amit said, a lot of banks have seen a tsunami of credit requests. And the question, how do you process that? And of course, to receive digital identities, of course, is extremely important to speed up that process. Yeah. So, Filippo, so how do you see that when you look in your research? So how do you also see evidence? So I think we all agree in this panel almost that collaboration is key. And of course, that's probably also an open door. I think also interesting to hear it from the different perspectives. But what kind of evidence do you see in the research you do?
It's clear that no one can win alone. You need the collaboration, definitely. Not the biggest bank, nor probably the big techs, because it's a complex world. But so that's why probably we have in Europe 48 open finance platforms. So the problem is if you have to collaborate, the problem is how to collaborate, how to be really effective and fast enough to provide innovation. That's the point. And we have seen that many of those platforms are also trying to innovate in a broader way, because we know open banking, and we received a push through PSD2, but now the innovation is growing broader, because not only for payments, but all the activities in the financial industries are receiving this approach, open innovation approach. And we see that almost 20% of those open finance platforms are beyond PSD2. So the innovation is growing.
Mm-hmm.
And moreover, we see a lot of non-financial institutions. We have seen more than 150 services provided, financial services provided by retailers and utilities. So the boundaries of the financial industries is changing. So you have to face, and you have to. It's compulsory to collaborate because otherwise you miss some important distribution channel.
Yeah.
You miss an important technology or something else. Like example we have in the panel, like Joe said, if you don't have the right collaboration in order to provide the right onboarding, you're losing opportunity, but also market and competitiveness.
Yeah.
That's my point of view.
Yeah,
it's
so
clear.
the horizontal integration, even to broader up into different verticals. So how do you see that with the big techs, right? I think that's also quite fascinating. We're talking about small fintechs collaborated with incumbents or new banks that also collaborate in the onboarding process to tap into new market segments and bring in new clients on board. The big techs, let's take Apple and Google, for example. They have their own ecosystems. They have a huge market share in terms of users. Apple is collaborating with Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs probably give access to banking to Apple. Google is collaborating with several banks in several regions in Europe with BBVA. Also, certainly BBVA is providing access to Google to, let's say, the whole market of banking. Is this also collaboration, or there's a very smart move from these two banks and these two tech firms just to collaborate with the two of them? How do you see that, Filippo?
Okay, it's a huge question. We work on it since 10 years and most. When we started to study mobile payments, the example of mobile payments is a good example in how it can be. And I can tell you that regulation is really important when you look at big techs, because regulation can change the power, definitely. And you know that those kind of companies like Apple, Facebook, they don't have a main country. They have the entire world. So probably they have the power to push something and provide a service, impose something like payment, but sometimes they don't need to do that because they don't look at, in some cases, you don't have so high margins and they are not interested in something. But I think regulation is really important. I've seen in many projects, you can give many examples, that also companies like Apple and Facebook had needed to collaborate with startups, with incumbents. If you look at mobile payments, you have seen that they started to collaborate in a less arrogant way than previously. I have seen that.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if the word was right, but are more or less thanks than the past.
So some of the other panelists have some reaction.
Yes. I was going to add to Filippo's point. It's Joe. So what are big techs? Why are they big? What are they absolute champions in? And that is putting the customer first. They understand how we work as a person, and they think from the outside in, and that some of the other companies that we might be talking about are less used to at that point. So I don't want a bank, I want to do a payment. I don't want a bank, I want to store my money. I don't want a bank, I want credit. And I don't really care if that comes from Google, Amazon, Apple. As long as I trust it and as long as it works really well for me, I'm fine with that. So I don't think the big techs are per se trying to collaborate. They're trying to solve a problem, and they're looking from the outside in and understanding essentially what their clients, the end users, want so well that translates into products that they need to collaborate with other infrastructure with.
I think that's a very interesting observation. Amit, you're knocking your face.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm knocking my head there, rather nodding there, is I think there is already a great example that we just witnessed in last 2 to 3 months, and I keep going back to that commercial loans example where government agencies collaborated with large banks. They collaborated with mid-market banks to bring, the new offerings and the new business loans to the market. And in some of the markets like states, you found that very specific payroll software companies also collaborated with big banks because they needed, real-time analysis of what those payrolls were as far as, against which, the loans were being sought. So, all these players already have a success story. Now they need to build on it and see in terms of how they can sustain it and enhance it. Of course, this was a calamity. Now we have to be ready for a new future, additional future that as we move forward.
Yeah. So you almost so to summarize, I think this last discussion. So we almost see that it's not so much about, it's not just banking, it's not just utility. It is much more. These are clients, these are group of clients, these are people that have certain behaviors, certain needs, and the question is who can cater for these needs, and it becomes much more blurb where financial services stops and where it ends, right? So Lawrence, I think you also witnessed that in the bank, right?
Yeah, Pooh, I think it's a big question you pose there, since the big techs, we were all waiting for them to enter banking and finance. A lot of speculation happened in the past about Google having banking licenses and so on and so forth. I tend to agree with Joe here that they really understand the clients, and they have also the data to understand the clients. So the examples you mentioned about Goldman and BBVA, I think they are tapping into that and tapping into the distribution potential of those platforms. On the other hand, I think there are obviously also some questions about big tech, about how big they really are and the market dominance they sometimes have, and whether the interest of the entrepreneurs, for example, that are on those platforms. And I think, the future will tell how this will evolve. I think in Europe we take the stance that we really want to protect our consumers and our SMEs, and I think that's a good thing. And I think there are some big techs that really show in their approach that they really want to serve customers and not only make money. So I think that's a good thing. Also for a bank, it's a new challenge. How do you collaborate with such a big company? I think there are many interesting, innovative examples, which we are also obviously looking at as ABN AMRO. But
I think it's interesting what you said. Because very often banks are the bigger one compared to their clients, right? And suddenly as a bank, you have to deal with a company that's even bigger than yourself. So equality is changing, right? Or the negotiation power and that process as well will have an impact, of course, how you work with them. Yeah. So I also see the time, right? So it is 12:48. So we had another quote. So Anna, probably interesting to put that on because it is really focusing on what we discuss at the moment, and then I give you the floor further, Lawrence. So innovation, culture, and capacity will democratize financial services further. So we talk about a lot of technology, but actually beyond technology is also the culture, the capacity to be able to change, right? And see certain sense of urgencies, a lot of moving panels, a lot of forces around that. And we can talk about onboarding, about identity, about unbanked, about tapping into new client segments. So Lawrence, sorry for interrupting you. So I think you are a big advocate of this, right? That it is really about the culture and the capacity. That's let's say the first start to enable change and to enable embracing innovation. Do you also see that it also provides, let's say, as a bank, the possibility to do other things in terms of financial services towards new client segments or provide new services? Is it really democratizing financial services? That's actually probably the question from me to you.
Yeah, what I think is if we take it one step back, we were talking about technology, and I think when David said, okay, we celebrate our second year, it really started me thinking. I think one of the things technology really has been doing is really democratizing also the entrepreneurship side. So nowadays it's super easy to start a company and build a technology stack in a couple of years. You have a really big company, and that was impossible 50 years back. And if we take that to finance, and we talk about open finance and about open banking, and also about maybe the Lego pieces or the building blocks that are being provided by fintech. And obviously we like to talk about the sexy fintech, but also there are some sexy plumbers out there that really provide some interesting rails for finance and for banking. And if you combine those, new combinations are being made, and I think that helps. And next to that, taking the sustainability and the inclusion angle, that's obviously a big topic. Also nowadays, also for ABN AMRO, and we definitely look about how we can include the unbanked more into this world.
Yeah. Thank you. And of course, the whole onboarding process is important, right? And also the credit analysis is important, and you need data points for that to get them on board, right? Okay, so Aditya, anything to add to this discussion from your side again?
Yeah, I mean, of course, culture, capacity, without a doubt, and maybe a byproduct of culture and capacity is intention, right? Which is something I think intuitively we understand, but you overlook the differences between intention, and strangely that actually segues me back to your old point. Like, I think comparing big techs with fintechs when it comes to culture, capacity, and intention is a very important point. For example, if you think about why a small to mid-sized fintech would, collaborate with a bank, it comes out of a very different intention, and a large part of it is survival, because you need them, right? But when you talk about, let's say, an Apple or a Google doing it, the intention there is to dominate. Today, an Apple knows when you leave your house, you probably take your phone and your wallet with you. What do I as Apple need to do such that tomorrow you actually don't take your wallet with you, you just take your phone with you, right? So I think that core factor of intention is a very big differentiator into how you shape innovation as an organization.
Yeah, okay, yeah, interesting. Yeah, so some of the other panelists, we have a few minutes to go to react to that. Amit, for example, from your side.
Yeah, I think I would I would sort of focus myself more on the operational capacity. If you give more operational capacity to the to the employees, specifically of these mid-size and large banks, then you are creating the additional sort of place. Lawrence would possibly can vouch for that. That if you can give every employee in ABN AMRO additional 5-10% time by freeing up what they do on a day-to-day basis, then you are also trying to also see if you can bootstrap innovation bottom up. If you have thousands of employees really coming up with new suggestions, because they are the ones who are facing the client, they are the ones who are dealing with the client data, they are the ones who are answering audit and regulatory complaints. So it's better to give them the 10-15-20% extra time, a capacity for them to come up with some of these bottom-up innovation ideas as well.
And what you said, you can only achieve that to give them more capacity to make sure that the execution engine get more operational agility.
Exactly.
To move to that. So that's almost a fundament, right? So that also you say how we do operations today should change as well to bring that capacity in that organization to adapt, let's say, real innovation.
And it comes back to that cost efficiencies not being sticky. They're not sticky because they don't have people at the center of cost efficiencies. If you have people at the center of cost efficiencies and give them automation to do their day-to-day work, rather than thinking of FT reduction or completely operational footprint reduction, though that cost efficiency or operational agility will stick and will actually go ahead and spawn more and more innovation.
Yeah. So this is really about how can you make your organization as agile as possible, both in the resources, humans, but also in, let's say, in your whole full operations. And I think that's what David, Joe, that's really where you're in, right? As young companies, right? Joe?
Yeah, I think, yeah, so the adaptability is key to survival, building our companies. I know that for sure. So at some point, it doesn't, even for an incumbent, even for a large bank, it's not a choice anymore. It's not so, are we going to do this? Yes or no? No, we have to do this. And that's definitely, to Ahmed's point, he has a good suggestion how to do that, how to free resources to cater for it. I think as we are pushed forward and then accelerated by COVID type of disasters, you'll see that those choices are now limited, and all of a sudden people have to innovate. And if the culture doesn't allow for that, I think they'll just, you'll probably not survive.
That's a quite bold statement. Yeah, that's probably yeah. So before we can verify that with our researcher, so David, so how do you see that from your organization? You are on mute, I guess, because I don't hear you.
So,
yeah.
No, you said from a research point of view, but Filippo is the researcher.
No, but first you as also a small fintech company with a 2-year celebration. I think you also have to work agile, and you have
of course, agility is key, and culture. Of course, we have a very innovative culture, else we would have not been able to launch what we've done. So culture is very important aspect, as mentioned by many people, but also just being objective and looking at data. What we do is we test a lot of stuff, and we look at data, what works well, what doesn't work well, and we don't go for the strongest opinion, we go for what the data tells us. And being open to what data tells you, and to really ensuring that you have a culture where people can come up with counterintuitive ideas and new visions, and they can back that up with data, then you have to give it a shot and try. And the bigger the organization, the more management layers, it's often difficult because you get opinions that are in the way. So it's not just freeing up time of the employees, it's also generating the culture where data-backed ideas have a chance, and that will lead to more innovation, and will also force the whole idea on inclusivity and diversification.
Yeah, interesting. So actually what we say here, big companies should behave a little bit more than small fintech companies and have that agility in their DNA almost, or bring that in there. Not all the financial institutions can do that. I think what Filippo said in the beginning of the session is there was a bank that could move 200% increase of onboarding new customers, and also banks that did only 2%, right, during the period of the first period of COVID. So there are banks, and use Joe's words, that are probably have difficulties to survive, Filippo. Do you see that in the research as well, that you see very clearly? Italy, of course, has many banks, a quadrant of banks that do extremely well, but also a quadrant of banks that can't really meet expectations anymore.
Okay, as a researcher, I can confirm you that if you don't evolve, you will die. It's already demonstrated in different environments that it's only a matter of how to evolve, how to adapt, how to collaborate. And now we have to collaborate in different ways. Yeah, obviously an incumbent has to apply open finance in a different way, but otherwise you have to find a way at a business level, at the technological level. That's why we have so many open finance platforms and APIs and systems to integrate and to develop new services in a faster way. And then you must do that also at regulatory level. Obviously, the glue is the culture in the company. Definitely.
Okay, Philippe, well summarized, I think. The clue is the culture with all the different components, infrastructure, plumbing, regulations, technology, but also, of course, the whole business model, how to make money, right? That should at the end also should work out. And all that together will help to further bring innovation. So that brings us to the clock, exactly at 1 o'clock now. So I think very interesting conversation we just had. I hope the people in this panel also enjoyed our conversation we had between the 7 of us. Thank you very much. And we go now into afternoon, and Amit and Adita, you are much more to the east from us. So have a great evening, and thank you all very much. And hope together we can collaborate and innovate also towards the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
to you all.
Bye.
Bye. Hoping to see you soon. Bye.